Hello, everybody. Tonight we have our most frequent guest, Michael Kopf, with us. And I encourage everyone to go into the YouTube video and look at the description part of the YouTube video. Right below the video, there's you hit more, and there's a huge description because Michael's bio is packed with all sorts of information about everything he does. And Michael, LaLa and I are very happy to have our most frequent guest back.
Well, I'm happy to be back, and it's kind of funny because this is my first solo appearance.
Oh, yeah.
But I've been on 3 panels, so it's my 4th appearance, first solo. So number 1 solo.
There you go. Won't be the last.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. So for given it's your first solo appearance, we get a lot more viewers after the live show is over, and people look throughout the week on their schedule. Tell everybody about Michael Kopf and what you got going on.
Well, let's see. What do I have going on? So, as Bob mentioned, my name is Michael Kopf. I am a paranormal investigator / podcaster / speaker / whatever apparently the mood moves me to.
And the list is long.
I have 3 podcast shows, 2 that I host and 1 that I co-host with 2 other wonderful hosts. Tuesday nights, actually following this show at 9 o'clock Central Time, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, is my show, The Energy That Surrounds Us, which is my paranormal show. Then on Wednesdays, 3 times a month at around 8 o'clock Central Time, I have my show Riding Through the Unknown, which is the esoterics and disclosure. And 3 times Thursday afternoons at 3 o'clock Central Time, 9 o'clock GMT time, is because that is Paranormal Versus with Kel Atkinson and Matt JB Atkinson, as Kel and Matt just got married.
Oh, that's great.
Congratulations. They're cute couple. They look good together.
They
complement each other.
They really do.
Yeah.
And the fun fact for everyone who's seen me maybe for the first time is all 3 of those shows LaLa's been on. So you have no reason not to have seen my show.
Yeah, it's fun. It's relaxed, but informative. You don't feel rushed. You don't feel judged. And every person that comes on has a different experience, and whether it be aliens or consciousness or paranormal. So it hits on all the topics. It's really interesting. It's like Orbis a lot, but you have 3. I don't know how you do it. My ADD would be like,
Yeah, it's let's just say I have 3 scheduled books and I still get things missed. So it's a lot to keep track of. And uh thank you for noticing that, because that's my goal with the shows is to uh so I like to quote, if you've seen my shows, full transparency is when I book a guest and they say, well, what do you want me to talk about? My answer is, it's your hour. What do you want to talk about?
Right.
And I just give them the space to share what they want to. And I have one question only pre-written for all my shows, and that is, can you introduce yourself?
Mhm. That's my son, Xander. Hi.
Hi, Xander.
So we picked. Well, I asked you what do you want to talk about, and you picked a topic. And because I'm your friend, I forgot what the topic was. So why don't you remind me?
Shoot,
Paranormal?
what was the topic?
Let me go to the text. Oh, I don't fucking know.
Oh,
Paranormal. Paranormal, I think.
it was something paranormal.
That's good enough.
Let's see. Where
But you've had a whole bunch of experience. I mean, a lot of experiences, and your family has had a lot of experiences.
Oh, here it is. Paranormal goals and topics of interest.
There you go. So that leaves it wide open for us to give you weird questions.
Yes.
Give them some weird questions.
Throw them at me. I'll take them.
I always like to know the weirdest or creepiest or most extreme experience you had, or that of someone close to you has had, because I've had quite a few really crazy ones, so it makes me feel better hearing somebody else going through something crazy too. But it's interesting to hear what happens in this world anyway. So
Well, I have one for you that happens to be a 2-part story because of how it landed. So I was on a paranormal road trip with a friend from Holland in America, and we were in Texas about to go to an event. And we were in the hotel and we were just watching TV. He was getting ready to go to sleep, and I was like, well, I was going to message someone. So I went to the other room, aka the bathroom, to give him privacy. And I started messaging him, and I hear my name clear as day. And I'm like, why is he calling me? I thought he was going to sleep. And so I thought, well, I'll check here in a second. And I hear my name again. And so I open the door. He's sound asleep.
mm-hmm.
So the morning comes in and I say, well, why'd you call my name twice and go to sleep? And he goes, funny you should say that. I heard your name twice.
Oh.
And was wondering where you were and went to sleep because I didn't see you. So I figured it wasn't you.
Wow.
And then I think we both kind of figured out it was a female voice too. We didn't pick up on that at first. It like blanked out on us. But I think I remember now, at least mine was a female voice calling my name. So, but that kind of got us started for what was yet to come. And so to speed the story along, we went from Texas to West Virginia to visit a friend of ours that's in our online group and to investigate somewhere. So we get there and the original location's not available, so we went to another school that's abandoned, and a guy is turning it into an art studio. So we were like, well, that's cool. We'll check it out. We get in there and we start investigating, and this is the real first investigation my friend in Holland and I had together. And so we went in and we're doing our individual stuff. And I go into a classroom and I get in the closet, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, it feels like energy is trying to push me through the basement or to the next level down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I go, look, spirits, I'm not going through the floor. Just let it go. It ain't going to happen. And so then I walked into the main classroom, and I turn and I go into the hallway, and I'll show you what I find. My friend who's wearing a cap, he's going like this and goes and fixes his hat. And I go, and I look at him, and he goes, something just flicked my hat off. And so I had to put it back on. And I go, man, everything happens when I'm in the other room. I was like, I would have loved to have seen that. And so he and I are sitting there talking, and we decide, okay, fun's over, let's go back. And anyone that knows me, when I first get to location, I go room by room, photographing baseline photos, and then later I'll go back and do, compare with if I take any others. As soon as I turn to go into the classroom on the other side of the hallway from where my incident happened, I hear his name called. And I turn and I look at him, and he turns and looks at me, and we silently are like, you heard that, right? And I'm like, yeah, I heard that. You heard it too. Okay, so we're not imagining things. And then we hear a laugh, and it's this female laugh. So we both go rushing up the stairs. I go out on the balcony overlooking this theater auditorium, and I look down, and there's this weird mark on the wood that's like, could be grain stain or something, but I was like, it was interesting. So I took 2 photos of it using a digital camera, get back to the hotel, find out those photos never took. They were blurred beyond belief. And I was like, there was plenty of light. There was no reason they shouldn't have taken. Plus, my friend never comes on the balcony. He's like, I'm fine here. We never find out where the voice came from or the girl's giggle came from. So we continue on, and we get to the top level, and they said, there's this room you got to check out. We walk into this little jut out closet attached to the front of the building, and there's almost every inch of the windows covered in flies. Mind you, no flies in any of the rooms.
No demon. That's good. I'm sorry.
Just this. Oh, not a demon, but very close, actually.
Yeah.
I turn and I look at my friend and I go, the energy is really thick here. Really, it's like sad, dark energy. Mm-hmm. And the person goes, well, that's where a kid jumped and took his life. And I was like, that explains all the flies and the energy there.
Yep.
And so we were like, wow. And so we get to the car, wrapping it up, and my friend in Holland goes like this on the top of my car and goes, thank you for not embarrassing me. And I was like, you're welcome. And the joke of that was, in the Facebook group we had met each other in, which is Ghost Ship Hunters 360, I would always be in the group saying, I won't run. I don't run. I'll take it, any spirit you give me, I'll take it head on.
Yeah.
And so we all know, and, on screen, you can use whatever bravado you want. But in person, that's where things are different. So that's why he was saying, thank you for not running. Because it was like, you were being honest on social media.
That's good. Yeah, I mean, I would have ran. I would have ran real fast. Absolutely. It's that. Do you think that I've heard that sometimes when you hear your name called and you think it's someone you know, it's a mimic? Have you heard of mimics?
I have. I also call them tricksters,
Yeah.
and so
Okay.
I feel like those are the spirits that are like trying to get your attention, and sometimes they have malintent. Sometimes they're just, bored, just like we get. And so I've never actually felt threatened by anything I've come across,
Okay.
but I have, though, on occasion stepped back and said, okay, let me take a breather and just recollect and move on. Hey, Woo Riders.
Um. Now I know you went to Egypt. Can you
I did.
can you talk about that?
I can. So, a friend of mine that I'd known for 20 years, William Henry, you may have seen him on Ancient Aliens.
Oh wow, yeah.
He was leading the tour, and I went and met his wife, and we all met at a compound in Cairo. We traveled from the airport together, and then we all checked in, and it was quite interesting because the gentleman I roomed with was from Perth, Australia, and he had the exact same birthday I did.
Wow. Oh wow.
I mean, literally, we were like the same day, and I was like, what are the odds of roommating with someone on your birthday?
Yeah, I think a lot of things are meant to be, obviously.
But and the cool thing is we would go in the courtyard of this compound area that we were staying, and I call it compound because it had armed security, because it was Egypt and that's how the culture is there. And we were advised if we were to walk into town, we needed to let them know, and they would have an armed guard go with us to make sure we got where we were going and coming back. So I was like, okay. But I was out in the courtyard and I could feel something different. And I was like, yeah, I'm in Egypt, and it hadn't fully sunk in until I turned around. When I turned around to go back into my room, the pyramids were right above the compound looking. I was like, it seemed like at the base of the pyramids. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm in Egypt.
That's cool.
The thing I like most about the photo I like most is from west of the pyramids, looking over the top of the pyramids toward Cairo, because people always show the picture looking west toward the pyramids from the nose of the Sphinx, and it looks like it's in the middle of the desert, and the city comes 200 feet from the Sphinx, and there's fast food stores and everything right across the parking lot. It's amazing.
It is, and the funny thing that people don't mention that I kind of thought you were going to hit on, Bob, a little bit, was everybody takes the photo not only of the desert behind the pyramids, but of there being 3 pyramids. There's actually 9 pyramids at least there.
Exactly. Yeah, there's 9.
Yeah. And the Sphinx is located right underneath the pyramids.
Yep.
So it's like the Sphinx is not in a different area. They're all pretty much right there on the Giza.
And the Cheops pyramid and the other one are identical, absolutely identical. I mean, it's impossible how identical they are. And the Sphinx is right next to the quote big one. They're both the same size. And the other 6 are interesting.
It is. And so the reason I mentioned the birthday is the trip actually fell on one of my birthdays.
Cool.
And so we went from the Nile from, I believe we started at the root chakra, which was, trying to remember which city that was, but I think it was Aswan. And then we moved up through the chakras. So we went to Philae, we went to Karnak, and we went to the Valley of the Kings. We went to a lot of the great temples. We passed the mountains going to one of the temples, and I said to my friend William, I said, there's some interesting energy coming from over these mountains over here. And he goes, oh, that's the mountains where the Nag Hammadi was found. And I was like, what?
Oh my God.
So I was like, wow. And
Yeah,
so
those scrolls were amazing. And
they are.
the thing is so crazy about that story is the farmer that found them had burned a third of them for
Yeah.
fire. And I'm lucky. It's lucky we got as many of the scrolls as we did from the time of Christ and just after.
Yeah, so it makes you wonder what was in the third that disappeared.
Exactly. I mean, because we got the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, several of those things in Nag Hammadi. It was pretty amazing. I took a course when I used to work in New Jersey from Elaine Pagels, who is the Gnostic Gospel Scholar of the United States. It was a great course.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that's really cool. And I like reading the books of the hidden knowledge of, like, when somebody tells me, oh, there's a gospel that's, been erased from the Bible. I'm like, I want to read that Bible.
Right.
I want to read that, gospel. Judas even had a gospel.
Yep, the Gospel of Judas. Yep. So Woo Riders wants to know if the energy at the pyramids is more prevalent at night. I've never been there at night, Woo Riders.
So actually, the energy is, I would have to say, to me, the same in day and night, but it's also, if you're, attuned to it. So, if you're awake and you're focused on the pyramids, you're going to feel a lot more energy than going about your day and being like, yeah, the pyramids are there, but I'm more focused on this, so you won't pay attention as much to the energies.
Mm-hmm.
However, I will also kind of contradict myself and say when you are asleep, the energies will go higher, so there is a chance the pyramids may have gotten more energy while you sleep.
I think it's a magical place. I think some people think they go much, much deeper and that they're like a craft or there's some sort of energy source for the crafts. It's interesting. I don't know.
Oh, just wait. I have a story that's you guys are going to totally flip on. So my birthday, as I mentioned, was on this trip. We, on my birthday, were scheduled and did do a trip to the pyramids, went into the King's Pyramid, all the way up to the King's Chamber, and we, as we're walking up, I mean, it was not an easy climb because some of it you have to crawl, some of it
stoop over. It's amazing how much you have to stoop over.
Yeah.
I don't believe I could do it now.
But what's interesting is, so the King's Chamber has a entrance wide enough for you to enter shoulder to shoulder, scooching on the ground. You have no room to like walk or even like crawl on your elbows. It's like literally scoot yourself through. And the reason I point this out is when you get in there, to your right is a solid piece of obsidian that was supposed to hold a sarcophagus. The lid is missing, but there's no way that little opening and that big sarcophagus ever worked. So either they placed that there, then built the opening, or somehow that appeared in the room.
Right.
Now, we got to lay in the obsidian sarcophagus, and we took the position of Pharaoh where you crossed your arms, and William tapped a tuning fork at the bottom left, so that would be your left foot corner, and then he went to the opposite corner, upper right shoulder, tapped it again, and everybody went into an out-of-body experience
Wow.
and had their own unique experiences. Mine was going through this mist and hearing people talking, and when I got through enough of the misty cloudiness, I could see the gods of Egypt were talking and just like standing around talking. And I'm like, at first I'm looking and going, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? And then I hear myself say, do you guys see what's going on back on Earth, back in Egypt? You know, why aren't you helping or doing anything? And I have no idea what was said or if I made them mad, because the next thing I remember, I'm waking up in the sarcophagus and being told it's the next person. And so I don't know if I got booted from the gods for pissing them off, or if they answered me and I just wasn't supposed to hear the answer.
Well, was it Isis and Ra?
It was Isis, Ra, Horus, Osiris, all of them.
Wow.
I was like, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then I was talking with my friend Kathy, who I've had on Paranormal Versus a couple times about it. Is she had this really cool experience in the Queen's Chamber. And both times we've been on the show together, I would look at her and I'd go, I have no memories of the Queen's Chamber. She goes, I know you were in there. I know you went in, because we all did. But it's really interesting that I have zero memory of the Queen's Chamber. I have memory from the King's Chamber, not the Queen's.
Why do you think that happened?
So to me, I feel like either I was so processing what I had just witnessed in the King's Chamber that I just was absent from and just going through the motions of walking around and being like, okay. Or perhaps there was another experience that happened that when I'm ready, it'll be unlocked and find out what happened in the Queen's Chamber.
Well, that's
So that was a missing time experience for
Right.
you.
It is, and it's only happened to me one other time that I have a complete blank.
what happened.
So
My chair.
I
Sorry.
had a few years ago, I had surgery on my leg where I had metal put in my leg because I broke it really badly. And when I took the hydrocortisone for a day, and I stopped taking it because it was making my brain feel fuzzy. And little did I know, from that one day of that pill, I lost an entire week of memory.
Wow.
Oh my God. Are you allergic to the medicine?
I don't know if I'm allergic or what, but
Wow.
I didn't need it, so I didn't take it. And so, Yeah, I have an extremely high pain tolerance, so that'll explain why I having a broken leg was like, I don't need a pain pill.
I wish I didn't feel pain like that. Oh my god.
The pain tolerance, to describe it, was when my leg was broken.
Mm.
I tried to walk on it 3 times thinking I had just pulled a muscle.
Mm.
It was
Ooh,
not registering I had broken it.
wow. How bad was the break?
I had disintegrated one bone, and the other bone was right below the knee at a joint. And so the doctor, before I went into surgery, the last thing I heard was, I hope I can save the leg. To waking up, and he's like,
Mm.
I was able to put the joint back together perfectly.
Good.
And the only thing he had to do was cut one nerve. There was no muscle damage, no tendon damage, no ligament damage, but there were pieces of bone floating around. And he was like, I can't explain this. And it happened on a stairwell. And he's like, he kept saying to us, are you sure this wasn't a car accident? To tell how bad it was. I was like, yeah, it was on a stairwell. So he was quite surprised, one, that he was able to put the bone joint back together perfectly, no other damage. And I was like, a month after he did the surgery and put 2 plates and like 9 or 12 screws in, I was like, can I start physical therapy now? And he's like, the bone looks fused, but let's hold off. I was shocked at what it looks like. It looks like it's ready, but let's keep it. And I had to push 2 months before I could get into physical therapy because he wanted to make sure the bone really was fused and just didn't look fused. And I was like, and he was surprised at how fast I was healing with my leg.
Well, that was my question. Do you normally heal quickly? And do you think it's maybe you have some extra help around you, or you might be a hybrid? Hybrids do. I've heard that they do heal quicker than other people. So I was just wondering.
So to answer your question to all 3, I could simply say yes.
Okay.
I did have help, and I am hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always had it. Like when I was growing up, getting the cold that people are like, spend 3 days to a week out.
Mm-hmm.
I was like 4 hours, 5 hours, and I'd be over it.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah. Well, they get over it quicker. Yeah.
Yeah. The only time I've ever been sick more than normal was both times were food poisoning
Oh, gosh.
or because I had exhausted myself and the body was shutting down to force me to kick in the regeneration cycle, as I call it.
Oh, I have a question. Do you have a question?
I was going to comment. My biggest hate is food poisoning. I hate it.
I've never had it.
First time I had food poisoning was we went to a restaurant to a hotel in the same city, so I thought no big deal. And I was still hungry, so I was eating the pasta without heating it up because I thought, I just left the restaurant, went straight to the hotel. What could possibly go wrong? Well, I found out, and I had to fly out the next day. So I had to go to the airport looking half alive, sweating, and trying and convince them, yes, I'm healthy enough to fly. There's nothing wrong.
Oh, my worst one was I ate something bad in the first class lounge in Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and I stayed in the airplane restroom from Tashkent, Uzbekistan, until Newark, New Jersey.
Wow.
I mean, they kept beating on the door to make sure I was alive. It was that bad.
Yeah. My worst actually was I was down for 3 days. I went, it was in the summertime, to Wendy's with a friend, and I had a triple baconator thinking, oh, I love bacon, burger, this perfect combination. I've eaten it before. Not from this place though, and I got home and I literally could not move for 2 days. My body like ached to move, and if I was able to move, it was to the bathroom to regurgitate whatever was in my system. And yeah, the third day I finally was able to start holding food down. So it actually took me 3 days, and I have yet to order
Hell no.
main food from Wendy's.
I have a question. I have a two-part question. One for right now, one for later. What were your experiences that made you think you're a hybrid? And do you think other family members are as well? And the second one is about dreams. I think we talked about this a little bit on your show, but do you think dreams are more than just dreams? And so
to answer the first part, what started making me think I was a hybrid was having an episode when I was 2 where I realized I had missing time during an event. And by that I mean, so what happened was at 2, I was on the second floor of a house that had a concrete basement, and my mom had covered the vent, and somebody or something moved the plywood. So I'm looking over the vent, and something grabs my arms, so I end up in the vent.
Oh my God.
Falling to the basement, and it's wintertime, so I'm bundled up, being a little kid, like 2-year-old. You can imagine how tall and how padded you are. Parents making you prepped for the cold.
Yeah.
And so I land on the concrete with no broken bones, no bruises, nothing. It was like I just got up and was like, okay, is my memory of it. And later on, I remembered as a teenager I remember an entity carrying me down and helping me land. And then a few years later, I remembered a conversation that we had. And this conversation, I always like to preface going, remember, this is 2 years old, me having this conversation. The being that I'm talking to, I go, okay, if I'm meant to help humanity, I need these gifts to be available at these times, and I need to be able to remember how to access them. And, if this is going to work, then yes, I want to be reinserted into the timeline. And I'm like, what 2-year-old has that conversation?
Right. Interesting.
And keep in mind, this is like a 3 to 5 minute conversation, but I'm falling from a second story to a basement. And the only thing was I was left with one memento. My eyebrow has a spot where it's missing hair, and that's where a wire nicked me.
Oh God. Well, what do you think? Do you think it was something bad that, literally dragged you in and down?
Oh, you're gonna love it, because I found out from Catherine Sorlos in Greece on my podcast show. She was talking to me about the event, and she goes, there was 2 entities. one entity is the one that pulled you in accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I air quote for anybody listening on radio. And she said the other entity took me from that entity and is the one that I had the conversation with and set me down. And I have been divinely protected ever since. So I have protection around me, and I have had 2 validations of this where people that read energy, being guests on my show, have actually on the show stated, going, I'm looking at your energy. You have symbols I have never seen.
Oh, wow.
Energy around you I have never seen. You are the most protected person I've ever seen, basically, is what it sounded like. And I feel like that's true because I will go into places and I don't fear what's there. It's like I don't antagonize it. I don't engage it unless it engages me. And that is something I think that more people ought to do. I don't agree with the having to antagonize a spirit to get a response method.
Right.
But that's just me. So,
well, I mean, look, you're going into their home and you're calling them out and being ugly to them in their home. That makes like 0 sense to me.
yeah. Well, and the other thing that makes 0 sense to me that I catch a little flack for this is I won't ever watch Ghost Adventures because I watched 1 episode and I didn't even finish it. And that was Zach antagonizing and stirring up the place. And then sending somebody else in to deal with what he just stirred. And stands in the background and is like, yeah, this is what's going on.
And probably lock Aaron in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, he locks him in. He just stirs him up and then locks him in.
Well, they lock themselves in the building, which I think that's not real because that's fire code. And what if there was an emergency? You got to wait for the paramedics to get someone with a lock key or lock cutter. It's like, come on. You're not really putting yourself in that level of danger.
Didn't his vision get damaged from an entity at like a place called the Hell House or something?
The Demon House.
I mean,
yeah. But yeah, and I am a firm believer of if you stir something up, you better stand your ground and face what you stirred up. And I just, I don't like people who send other people in to go, okay, tell me what you experienced now that we, warmed it up for you. I'm like, you didn't warm anything up for me.
Right.
I am not a sacrificial lamb.
I was just thinking on that.
Well, he constantly does that. And in the Demon House, he went in with 20/20 vision, and he walked out needing prisms and Coke bottles for glasses. He paid a price for that.
Yeah.
And he deserved it. He earned it.
He does, and I have a kind of motto in my head or theory to the spirits when you go in there. If you are in there for quote 15 minutes of fame or to make a name for yourself or just in small terms be a jerk, the spirits are going to leave you alone. They're not even going to mess with you. You'll just have dead everything and have to fake whatever you got going on. It's my opinion. They're not going to interact with you.
And the ones that interact, you don't want them to interact with you.
Right.
So.
You're going to get what you... I'll go into that in a second. But the flip side is like when somebody goes into the same space calm, just asking questions. We'll hear knocking, we'll hear footsteps, get EVPs, because they realize you're there actually to communicate, actually to do the investigation. You're not there for any other purpose than to try and communicate. So they will respond to that. And so that's why that's my take on why you could have 4 people in one room and no one has the same experience. It's all dependent on what they're open to and what they're there for.
I agree. Oh, the dream question.
Before we get to the dream question, a friend that I recently met, Chris McKinnell, put out a statement that I think really kind of hits home for investigations and stuff. And that is, he says, go and watch your intention of when you do investigations or doing anything in your life, because like attracts like. So whatever you're putting out into your experience, that's what you're going to get back. And so if you're going to be the jerk, you're going to get the jerk spirit to respond to you. So just keep that in mind, like attracts like.
Right.
So just before we go into the dreams, LaLa feels and has been told she's a hybrid, and we have 2 recent incidents that show she is protected. So she got hit driving my truck twice, and it really damaged the other cars. And there's 0 evidence on my truck that it was, but she was shoved out of the way. So whatever it was got between the truck and the other vehicle, let it get damaged and push her and her son and the truck out of the way. You can't see a mark on this truck. And I mean, 1 car was totaled. These are miracles like that.
Right. Oh, I know, and I agree. And I remember LaLa telling me these when I'm thinking you even told me about one of them when it happened, and I was like, yeah, I'm just glad you're okay. And yeah, you were definitely protected because of the way she described it to me. I was like, yeah, there's no other way to say it but something.
Let me give you an indication of how startling it is. The same cop investigated both accidents, and he says, on the second one, I remember you. Dadgummit, I'm going to go buy one of these trucks.
Yeah.
Of course, she didn't have the heart to tell him she has protectors.
Yeah. But, it may work for him, and he may have the same experience with the truck because his intention is so that this truck is safe and protects him, that it's going to do it.
I just want to add that both accidents were not my fault.
No, neither one.
They ran a red light and a stop sign, just in case anybody.
No, and the insurance people said
that's what they all say.
There's nothing here. We didn't have to pay out anything. This one tried to lie and blame it on you, but we proved that she's a liar and so forth. Yeah, nothing. There's not a mark on my truck.
Yeah, I had one incident where a truck, an 18-wheeler cab, hit my mom's car, and I was driving it. And when I turned it in, I said to the insurance, well, he was on his headset talking to somebody when we got out. And then he informed me that there were cameras that caught everything. And so then he had to turn all that over, and the cameras did not corroborate his story.
Right.
And the fact that he was on the headset talking to someone, they said, yeah, he was most likely distracted, not paying attention.
And
And
lying to police officers.
put him at fault.
And lying to police officers. That's just not a cool move.
I don't know if we actually had the police show up. I think I filed a report at the police station, maybe, because police don't always come to accidents now. They tend to ask if there's blood. If there's blood, they'll show up. If not, then it's a 50-50.
What state are you in?
Texas,
Oh, I believe it.
There you go.
I believe it.
greatest state ever, second largest.
They show up in Maryland. All right, do the dream question.
Oh.
So, to answer your question about dreams, yes, dreams can be more than what they appear.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make that be a Transformers moment, but they are transformative. Haha. Dreams, to me, can be the subconscious bleeding into the conscious. And what that means is, so if something is on your mind that you're trying to figure out and your subconscious has the answer, but your conscious mind can't wrap itself around it, you'll have this dream where you're like, oh my gosh, I was watching this scenario and it made total sense of everything. There was no coincidence to that. That was your subconscious saying, look, we're tired of trying to tell you what's going on and you missing the key. So here you go. Dream state.
Yeah.
Boom. You got it. And also, dreams can be visions of past lives to alternate timelines, to parallel worlds, to different dimensions. So dreams is where our mind is the most freest to do what it is meant to do. Our minds are not meant to limit us to Earth mentality only. That's why we have so much knowledge and space in our brains, but they say we don't utilize it all because we've been taught to limit what we can think about or understand, and so we don't access the other parts. And part of the ascension that we're going through, in my opinion, is not only are we unlocking the quote junk DNA, which, let's be honest, nobody created us with junk inside of us. Everything serves a purpose. And the brain level, we're going to be utilizing much more, which means telepathy possibilities, telekinesis possibilities, instant teleportation possibilities, traveling to different places without needing suits or anything. Mm-hmm. If you can think it, you can do it, is I think where we're heading.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I feel like that's going to be different is everything that we think is going to be for the benefit of humankind or the hybrids or the star beings. It's no longer going to be benefiting me. We're going to lose the I and realize we are one with everything around us.
Yeah.
Yep, we are facets on the diamond of the universal consciousness. We are a piece of it.
We are,
and all we see is illusion.
It is, and I had a friend I was talking with. He was on one of my shows, and we've all heard of the universe, the multiverse, and then he goes and he says to me, well, yeah, and then you can access the ultraverse. And I was like, wait, what? There's even another verse? And so it's like we really are in an infinite realm to where we are literally as smart as we think we are, a pebble on a beach of sand.
Yeah.
We
That
are
there's-
less than a grain of sand on that beach of sand.
Well, some of us, I will agree with that, but there are some that I think have reached the pebble state.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I agree with
I
that.
agree.
I agree with that.
But
Oh,
yeah,
We got under 5 minutes before you have another show. So
actually, my show is being pre-recorded, so
oh, cool.
That's why
I can stay as long as you need me to stay.
Oh, that's great. Then we're going to go till the end.
I'm gonna get water.
It'll
Yeah. Yep.
it'll
Okay.
be my first full appearance.
That's true.
There you go. All right. So I was going to go back to something you said earlier because we have, in rough ways, some similarities. Go ahead. You go.
Okay.
Yeah. When I was 3, I woke up like every other morning, got up, walked into where my mother was entertaining her friend, walked over to the bookshelf, grabbed the book, and started reading this adult book to my mother and her friend. And of course, I had not been to school. And by the time I was 10, I had the equivalent knowledge and abilities in electronics, radio, anatomy, chemistry, geology, etc., of a college education. And I have no idea where that stuff came from. And I've had downloads my entire adult life. They have something they want me to do. I think it's mostly to be with her.
That makes sense, and yeah, I've had experiences, and 2 experiences that stand out for me that I share a lot is when I was at Yorktown battlefield and Vicksburg battlefield. Ironically, 2 different wars, Revolutionary versus Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
But I was able to, and my mother especially, and my father were like ecstatic when this would happen. Is I would start giving out, going, okay, you got a platoon of soldiers over here moving, or a regiment over here moving to counter, and there's all, I could tell where troops were moving and who was fighting where, cannons were where they were, and what was happening. And it was like I was literally sat down in a 360 room where they're playing a movie, and I could see it, I could smell it, I could taste the gunpowder and the blood and everything, and all my senses were engaged in that. And I always thought it was past life memory, just keyed in because I was there. So it's like, hey, we're here, overlay the memory, share the experience. And Dr. Heather, who was on my show, Paranormal Versus, she goes, because all your senses were engaged, that in her studies shows you were actually in that moment. Like I was actually literally at the siege of Vicksburg or the Battle of Yorktown.
Did you see Grant?
I might have in passing, but it was like there was the smoke was so thick you could barely see the color of the uniforms, and going, who's moving where, and going like, and you're like wanting to scream out, no, don't go there because they're right there, and try to help, and you realize you can't.
That was the battle where Lincoln knew he had picked the right general, because Lee spent everybody he needed on his side to completely eviscerate the logistics for the South. Vicksburg was where he interrupted all supplies coming in from the Mississippi and going go into the rest of the Confederacy. And that battle, but people don't know it, but that battle won the war.
It was. And the other facet, actually, to go along with your story, was every general that Lee had fought up to this point never pressed the advantage.
Right.
They could have them outnumbered, but they played it too cautious. Lee knew they were going to do that, so he was able to turn the tide and take advantage of that. And Grant was the first general that, when Lee goes, oh, this will be a pushover, they're not going to be able to hold the siege. Don't worry about it. We'll, break free. This will all work. And Grant's answer was, oh no, we have the advantage. We have taken the water. So we were going to bombard from the water. We have surrounded them on land. We are not going to let them cower away and sneak off. And Lee was like, wait a minute. This general is not doing what the prior generals did. And he said in that moment, Lee knew he was in trouble and the war was not going to go in their favor because Grant was a different general.
Very different. He knew what he was there for. He had a purpose, and he did it. And then, from there, he just took it to the end.
Yeah, and one of the things that I think is interesting in history is everybody, mocks Grant for being the drunk general. And they found out he actually had a condition to where he would, if he had one drink, his body would start to work as if it was drunk, even though he wasn't drunk. So he was never a drunk general, but his body reacted to alcohol to make it look as if. And they were like, and it was like, yeah, it totally paints a whole new picture on him because his entire career, they were judging him as being drunk on duty or drunk doing this. And he was like, I was not drunk. And he sometimes didn't even have a drink and it would still happen.
Grant.
General Grant. And so I think the threat to that is our establishment is so ingrained us for so many years. This is the history. This is what it is. You just memorize this, spit it back to me. That's what we live in, to where now it's all having to be rewritten, and that's a threat to them.
Yep. Well, now, and of course, all across the South, the armed services are renaming the bases, not after Civil War generals, but after others who are not insurrectionists.
Right. Well, and I kind of take offense a little bit to when they say the South were insurrectionists, because everybody has been blindly led to believe the Civil War was fought over one thing: slavery. That was not what started the war. That was not even a part of the war until around Gettysburg, when the Emancipation Proclamation came out, because we needed soldiers. So they thought, hey, here's a market of soldiers that are willing to fight, but we don't ever give credit to them. Let's give them a shot. And it ended up, they were fighting they fought on both sides. And people aren't taught that. And the Civil War started because the North was telling the South how to run their state and telling them states' rights no longer existed. It's federal government versus state rights. and the states wanted to keep their economy they wanted, and the North was saying, no, you have to change your economy. And so that's what it was states' rights, because that's what our nation was founded on. And so did, the right side win? That's, debatable, because states' rights are important. It keeps the government in check. But at the same time, there are things that I think the government has the rights to tell the nation as a whole. So it's like, it's a gray area of, keeping that balance.
You got another question?
Not about history, because I don't.
No,
I
don't
don't
have
know much
history.
about
Oh,
history.
no, we can talk about anything. I
Just
said
talk
any
about it.
topics.
Okay. I lately have been enjoying listening to people talk, especially priests, exorcists, talk about not only possession, but what was it? It's oppression and then possession, right? First, it's like they go through steps before they fully get the person under their control, which I didn't know at all. And I've been listening, and a lot of people, it's very rare to get fully possessed, but a lot of people are under an oppression, right? Like killers or severely depressed people. It's all kinds of stuff. So, have you ever had a guest or an experience or whatever that has had something with like a demonic energy around them?
I have not. However, a couple of times I've had a chief exorcist on the show, and to be honest, his name is Kenneth Torres, and I don't think I've ever heard him use the word oppressed.
Yeah, I never heard it till
So that's new to me, and so I'm not 100% sure what that means and refers to. So I've heard of possession,
yeah,
and attachments,
yeah.
and so could an attachment be an oppression? Maybe.
Oh my God, our light just flickered when we were talking about.
No, it's thunder and lightning
Okay.
outside.
Oh my God.
But to me, so a spirit cannot take hold of anybody under any circumstance under universal law without permission. That's the first rule.
Heard. Yeah.
And how they get in, a lot of people are obviously going to sit there and go, nobody's going to give permission to a spirit and saying, yeah, come and take, hijack my body. Well, that's not how they operate. How they operate is you could be hearing it like a knock on your door, and you feel like, oh man, my mom is outside, even though she's on the other side, and knocking on the door, and I so miss mom, and you unwittingly open the door to look to see, oh, is her spirit outside? You have, in essence, granted permission to that spirit to come in.
Oh, sorry.
That's how they get around it, is they use methods to, make you believe one thing even though it's another.
Right.
And you may think nothing of it, and they'll stay dormant, and could be a week later, month later, days later. They're like, okay, they'll forget about what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's kick into gear and start to do what we're here to do. And they'll start making sounds and start making you a nervous wreck or unnerved.
Yeah.
And get you into a state of fear. And then they're like, aha, now that we have you in fear mode, this is my territory. So this is where my domain is. I got a food source here. I'm not letting up. And the second you start to get wise, they'll intensify. So that you're like, oh, so you'll think even though you did everything right, it's not working because you're still in the fear and they're still there. And what needs to happen is what I suggest, and I've started doing this myself because I didn't always do it because I didn't think about it either. You know, harmlessly opening the door to see if someone's out there is to simply state, you know that I opened the door, but whatever energy just came in, whether you're good or bad energy, you do not have permission to enter and stay here. Thank you. And you're done. And they have to leave.
That's what I heard.
Because you revoked the permission. And I said to one of my guests that was sharing this with me, I said, it sounds like the vampire lore. And they laughed and said, oh, it's exactly like the vampire lore.
We were just talking about vampires and what the real ones were like and stuff like that the other night, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
but yeah, I mean, and the amazing thing is, so people don't realize, one, how powerful they are, and two, how powerful the mind is. That even if you've been, say, you, LaLa, for example, on your worst experience, you're having, you totally have the power to, in that moment, snap and say, you no longer have permission to be here. You need to leave. Mm-hmm. And it has to leave, no matter how long it's been there, how entangled it is. Mm-hmm. You can totally withdraw the permission anytime. It doesn't have to be done in the beginning. And that's something that people need to be aware of, is if they feel like there's an entity that's come into the house, you don't have to wait for someone to come and validate it. You can just be like, hey, I revoke your permission.
You got to go, yo.
If you don't pay rent, get out. Bye.
And it's amazing is that's actually, and somebody was even saying to me, that's the exact verbiage. I revoke your permission, you're out.
You don't got to go home, but you can't stay here.
And the second thing about it is you can't just say it and hope it works and have any doubts about it. Intention is just as powerful as the words and thoughts. So if you go into it and you're like, I'm at my wit's end, I don't think this is going to work, but let's give it a shot anyway, chances are it's not going to work. Or if it does, it's temporary because they're like, well, he said it, but he really didn't mean it, so we'll come back later and, we'll just start over. We'll give him a break. Mm-hmm. But if you mean it and you stand in the power of the moment and say it, mean it, it's gone. It can no longer hold space under universal law, which overrules any earth laws.
That's very true. It is. Oh, hello.
Yeah, and the third part, that's kind of a 50-50. Sometimes I agree with it, and sometimes I kind of doubt about it. Is someone said, if you clear something and then like a week later go to your friend and say, oh yeah, I had this spirit here and I, said this and it left because you talked about it, you open the door for it to come back. I don't necessarily fully agree that that's true,
I hope not.
but I mean, just to be on the safe side, after you talk about it, you can always say, hey, I know I talked about you, but again, remember, I revoke your permission to be here.
Okay.
And they're
That's what
gone.
I think about. I do worry about that because sometimes, with my experiences I've had, we're a little extreme, and I, I think some of them came around because I was grieving and I was so low, and that scares me because I didn't know that could happen when you're really sad, and so I, I, I try so hard not to think about them, but then I end up thinking about these things. I'm like, oh my God, I hope this doesn't pull them back. So I'm glad you said that because I can't help it. I'm human, at least part human, So, but it's interesting. I like hearing people's stories. You know, I always believed in paranormal, but I never believed in things so extreme or tricky or just evil until I had my experience, and it just opened up a whole nother world that I was terrified to even think about or talk about. But now I've been looking it up, so I just like to get everybody's, opinions about it.
Right. And one of the things that I will say is I was blessed last year to start writing articles for an online newsletter.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of redoing their system right now, but it was Conscious Collective newsletter. And I was putting articles in there, and I decided, I think it was the second article, was I was going to say, I wrote it as, what is paranormal? Because everybody always asks what's paranormal, and my answer was always, well, you're going and ghost hunting or talking to spirits. And I was like, but I always felt like there should be more, but I don't know. And so in working on this article, I took everybody's view, and then I looked at the definition through the dictionaries. And the bottom line of what I came up with was anything that is unexplained is paranormal.
Mm-hmm.
And my mind just went boom, like, whoa, wait a minute. UFOs, paranormal. Angels, paranormal. The supernatural, paranormal. Portals, paranormal.
Oh,
And I was like, my shows just exploded open with topics at that point because I was like, I felt no longer restricted to, being like everybody else, just sharing paranormal experiences at a haunted location, which nothing wrong with that.
mm-hmm.
But like you were saying in the beginning, is I get to go to what I call the fringe elements of the paranormal that most people don't go to because they choose not to, and that's fine. That's what makes paranormal podcasting and everything perfect is everybody's show is different. Even if it's the same subject, it's approached differently. And that's why I like to give my guests the freedom to share how they want to share, what they want to share.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like they go on so many shows repeating the same information the same way because of the way the questions are asked.
Right.
And I wasn't sure at first, if that would work or if I should go back to that method. But I had a few guests that when the show was over backstage saying, I'm so glad your show is run the way it was because you asked questions that I have not been asked that way on a show, or you heard something in my story and allowed me to go deeper on it.
Yeah.
because other people miss it. And I was like, wow. So they were like, don't change. So I was like, I won't. I keep it the way it is.
That's good. Well, I would. Can we have you on another time, just yourself again? Because there's so much I want to talk about, but I also want my shrimp pasta. I love you, but I'm just saying, like.
Oh, I'm happy to come on anytime when the schedule works. And
yeah, that'll be good. And I think I'm coming on your show soon, right? Am I? I think I am.
I don't have one scheduled, but we can do it.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
I'll let you pick which one.
Can you tell everybody how they can get a hold of you?
So I can be found on Facebook as Michael Kopf, and I can be found on YouTube under Michael Kopf or The Energy That Surrounds Us YouTube page. Paranormal Versus has a YouTube page. You can reach me or Kel or Matt. Writing Through the Unknown has its own YouTube page. I'm also on X or Twitter, and I'm on TikTok, and I'm on Instagram, and eTalk.tv. I have a channel there where the shows air. And so, yeah, I am easily found. And I did an interview with the lady from Canada who, on her show, one of the things she does is has a Facebook chat group of everyone, and they share a link tree. And it's what it is it's one link that encompasses all your social media links in one link. And so it was like, oh, that became such a blessing for creating podcasts, bios, and everything, and going, yeah, so don't have to list like 15 different locations. It's all in one, and save the characters.
Yeah.
Because Bob and I laughingly were talking about before the show started that we have had to take people's bios and cut because they were too long.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Michael, it was really good having you on. Thanks for being such a good friend to LaLa and us.
Well, I enjoy you guys, and I have so much fun on your shows. So
Thank you.
I am always willing to hop on if I'm available, even for half an hour, if that's what I can do. But yeah, I have a lot of fun, and I am so grateful that you guys, even when you have topics you think I'd be interested in, are like, hey, can you come on for half an hour? We really would like you to come on. I'm like, you have no idea how that really makes me smile and hits me right here, going, oh, they like me. They really like me.
Yeah, so she's always reading people and their energies, and she just knows you have a good energy and a good heart. And thank you so much for being on. And I hope our audience will come and visit you in your other endeavors, because you've got a bunch of interesting ones. Michael, it was great seeing you again, and come back soon.
I definitely will. Bye-bye.